A modern military drone weighs 40 pounds, costs $1 million, and is instantly neutralized by a simple signal jammer. Now, look at this. It weighs less than a pound. It runs on seeds. It cannot be hacked, jammed, or tracked by radar. You are looking at the most reliable communication network in human history. During the First World War, when artillery shells severed telephone wires and heavy static choked the airwaves, human empires fell silent. Armies were blind, deaf, and completely isolated in the mud. Not because they ran out of ammunition, not because they lost their courage, because they lost their direct connection. To survive, they relied on a creature you probably look down on in city streets today. You are a feathered messenger flying through a storm of shrapnel and poisonous gas. You have no armor. You cannot fight back. Your target is a tiny coop hidden behind a hill 100 miles away. If you fail, thousands of men will die in the next hour. But to understand how this simple bird held the fate of civilizations in its wings, we must uncover 3 staggering secrets. First, how a bizarre biological quantum compass allows them to see the invisible lines of the Earth. Second, the harrowing mission of a single bird that saved nearly 200 trapped soldiers while flying with a shattered chest. And third, a legendary financial conspiracy involving a secret pigeon network and the wealthiest banking dynasty in modern history, the Unravel. For thousands of years, humans ran, rode horses, or built fires to send messages. A horse would collapse from exhaustion after 30 miles. A runner would drop dead. But a pigeon could be released from a ship in the middle of the North Sea and fly straight back to its loft at 60 miles per hour without a single break. The question we have to ask is simple. How does a brain the size of a single peanut navigate across thousands of miles of completely unfamiliar territory to find one specific window? The answer is not a single trick. It is a layered, multisensory guidance system that scientists are only now beginning to explore. And some parts of it are still genuinely debated. In 2013, researchers at the University of Oxford conducted a groundbreaking study using miniature GPS backpacks on homing pigeons. What they discovered shocked the scientific community. The birds did not just rely on wild instinct. They were actually mapping human roads, following highways, and even turning at specific roundabouts. Yet, roads do not exist over open ocean. To survive the vast, empty blue, these birds must activate a deeper, far more ancient level of technology, a technology built directly into their biology. Let us begin with our first mystery, the incredible quantum compass. For decades, biologists argued about how pigeons found their way home when released from sealed, dark crates. They tried blinding them or disrupting their sense of smell, yet the birds flew home. One of the leading theories lies in an extraordinary phenomenon inside the bird's eye. Inside the retina of a pigeon is a specialized protein called cryptochrome. Some researchers believe that when blue light hits this protein, it triggers a quantum reaction, creating a pair of highly sensitive, entangled electrons. According to this theory, this quantum entanglement is so delicate that it reacts to the weakest magnetic fields on Earth. As the bird tilts its head, these electrons shift, changing the signal sent to the brain. If this theory holds, the bird may not just feel the magnetic field, it may actually see it. The Earth's magnetic grid could appear to a pigeon as a shifting pattern of light and shadow overlaid directly onto their field of vision. It's important to note this is still an active area of scientific debate, not a settled fact. But it remains one of the most fascinating theories in animal navigation. There's a second system that's on firmer ground. Pigeons can hear infrasound, ultra-low frequency sound waves that travel thousands of miles through the Earth's atmosphere. This gives them access to a kind of acoustic map. The deep rumble of ocean waves crashing on distant shores, wind whistling over mountain ranges, even micro-seismic vibrations in the ground. They are flying inside a vast symphony of planetary noise that human ears are completely deaf to. But while this quantum visual system seems impossible, it does not compare to our second mystery. How this internal guidance system was tested in the absolute hell of modern warfare, and the one bird that refused to die. And we still have not reached the ultimate fallout of our third mystery. a legendary network that, according to popular history, helped shape a massive financial dynasty. In October 1918, deep in the Argonne forest of France, nearly 500 American soldiers, under Major Charles Whittlesey, were trapped in a narrow ravine, surrounded by German forces. To make matters worse, their own artillery did not know their position. The sky began to rain friendly fire. Heavy American shells exploded in their trenches, tearing the battalion apart. With no radio and shredded telephone lines, their only hope lay in a handful of carrier pigeons. Major Whittlesey wrote a desperate note, slipped it into a tiny metal capsule, and secured it to the leg of a pigeon. He released the bird. It was instantly shot down. He released a second. It, too, went down. A third bird rose and met the same fate. Only one bird remained, a blue hen named Cher Ami. The soldiers watched as Cher Ami took off into a wall of machine gun fire. Within seconds, a bullet clipped her head. Another piece of shrapnel ripped through her breast, sending her spiraling toward the blood-soaked mud. The soldiers felt their last hope die. But then, something remarkable happened. Cher Ami regained her balance. She beat her wings, rose back into the smoke, and flew 25 miles in just 25 minutes. When she arrived at division headquarters, she was covered in blood. She was blind in one eye. Her breastbone was split open by shrapnel, and her leg was hanging by a tendon. But the message tube was still intact. The deadly artillery fire was stopped. Nearly 200 survivors, the lost battalion, were rescued, in large part because of her flight. But why did she keep flying? Why did her biological programming override the basic survival instinct of a wounded animal? Normally, when an animal is severely injured, its body shuts down to conserve energy and heal. Its brain forces it to cover and hide from predators. But the homing instinct of a carrier pigeon isn't an intellectual choice. It's an intense, deeply wired neurological pull. Being away from its home loft puts a pigeon into a state of real distress. They don't fly home because they are loyal. They fly home because their entire nervous system is driving them back to that coordinate point. Yet, even this incredible display of physical resilience is completely overshadowed by a strange exception to the rule. Normally, carrier pigeons are largely useless at night. Because they rely heavily on visual cues and solar positioning, they will generally refuse to fly once the sun goes down. If released in the dark, they will simply roost in the nearest tree and wait for dawn. But during the Second World War, this limitation was seen as a real security vulnerability. Enemy forces knew pigeons only flew reliably by day, making it easier to intercept them with trained falcons or marksmen during daylight hours. So the Allied forces experimented with breeding pigeons for slightly greater twilight activity, training some birds to navigate using sound and magnetic cues in low light. These night flyers became far harder to intercept, slipping through enemy lines with much less exposure to German falcon patrols. But while these wartime stories saved thousands of lives, they don't compare to our final, most debated secret, a legendary pigeon network said to have shaped the birth of a global banking empire. Let's rewind to June 1815. The fate of Europe hung in the balance at the Battle of Waterloo. In London, the financial markets were in a state of panic. If the British coalition under Wellington lost to Napoleon, government bonds would become worthless. If Wellington won, those same bonds would skyrocket in value. Every wealthy investor was waiting for the official courier. According to a long-standing and widely repeated legend, Nathan Mayer Rothschild had built a private network of agents, fast boats, and messenger pigeons that let him learn of Wellington's victory a full day before the official news reached London, allowing him to make a fortune trading on the information. It's a genuinely great story, and it's been told for 2 centuries. But historians today are skeptical of it. There's little solid documentary evidence that pigeons were actually used to relay the Waterloo news, and many researchers believe the tale was invented or heavily embellished decades later. Some trace it to anti-Semitic propaganda from the late 1800s, designed to paint the Rothschild family as secretive manipulators. What we do know for certain is that Rothschild had an extremely fast and effective private information network. and that his firm did profit enormously from bond trading around this period. The specific pigeon beat the government by a day version, though, is best treated as legend rather than confirmed history. Fact or legend, the carrier pigeon's real, documented history is remarkable enough on its own. They carried the desperate messages of soldiers in the mud, and, through systems we're still working to fully understand, found their way home across oceans using senses we don't have. We built our early idea of long distance, unhackable communication on the wings of a bird most people walk past without a second glance. But while the carrier pigeon era ended, the age of biological warfare was far from over. Decades later, the military tried to weaponize an entirely different animal to destroy cities. How did scientists try to use bats to win a war? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Hit the subscribe button right now and click right here immediately to uncover the incredibly dark, deeply classified, and absolutely terrifying history of America's secret bat bomb project.